welcome back to the channel. It's November, so I thought we might like a little tour of the flower farm and see what we're doing this sort of soggy November day. Sometimes people wonder what flower farmers do when the season's over, and so it's a really interesting month to join me having a look around. We have really got the end of the season here. The dahlias are all being lifted, and the beginnings of next season. I'm just pinching out my sweet peas, and on we go. It never stops. We're on a kind of, it's like a thoughtful hamster wheel. Flower farming is an endurance sport, but it doesn't move fast. So as a rule, if you play your game quietly, you're never out of breath. You don't completely run out of energy. You can just keep on moving. Pinching out sweet peas while I'm here is a great topic. People really struggle with knowing why and how to pinch out their sweet peas. I grow 3 root trainers worth of sweet peas, which gives me about 90 plants, twice a year. These were sown at the end of September, and they've been outside the whole time. And as you can see, they've germinated and come along really nicely. And the reason we pinch out sweet peas is to encourage them as plants to bush out. So I'm snipping out, I have snipped out already there, the growing stem of the sweet pea, and I'm just leaving 2 sets of true leaves. And what will happen is between the 2 sets of true leaves, I'll get 2 more stems growing. So I'll end up with a sweet pea plant which has 3 stems, which will give me a very bushy plant, which means that when I plant them out, I can plant them a foot apart so that they're not fighting with each other for nutrients and water, because they're hungry and thirsty, our sweet peas. They like hot sunshine, but they don't want to dry out, and they like to eat. So by having really bushy plants growing up, I get plenty of stems to cut, but I'm not having to crowd those plants together in the ground to get that stem count. So I'm just literally, the reason we say pinch out sweet peas, it's really, I don't pinch out. My fingers are too blunt to pinch out my sweet peas, but my snips are nice and sharp, and so I'm pinching out my sweet peas with my snips, leaving 2 sets of true leaves, and I'll get 3 stems per plant growing on to flower. And these are going to get planted in the polytunnel quite soon. It's early November, but they'll be in the tunnel before Christmas. Basically, when I'm ready for them, I've got to dig them a trench of good, thick, rich compost, and then I'll plant them in the polytunnel, in the cold polytunnel, where they will sit sulking all winter, and I will just stop them drying out. I won't water them too much. I'll just look after them a little bit through the winter, and they, depending on the spring we have, we don't know what kind of spring we're going to have. I hope they will be in flower beginning of May, end of April, beginning of May. Depends on the spring next year, but I will certainly have them for my May weddings. And these varieties I grow are all modern grandiflora or Spencer varieties. There we are. So they're nice big heads. They're very scented. Obviously you can grow the heritage varieties of sweet peas, which are more scented. But you know what? A bowl of these in a marquee for a wedding, you'll smell them. Right, I'm going to get on with the rest, and then we'll take them down to the greenhouse. Now, if you're new to the channel, you're very welcome. Please do subscribe, press the bell icon, and we'll tell you when we've got more clips coming up. And if any of the tips and tricks we give you along the way are useful, you can always join my club, which is where all the fun happens. The link to club membership is in the blurb to all my clips. And if you're a regular watcher of my clips, it would also be really, really great if you subscribe, because what happens then is you reassure the algorithm that not only do you like to watch my clips, but you really want to see them. And then the algorithm shows my clips to more people, and that's really, really helpful. So thank you, and on we go. Right, before I go down to the greenhouse and the polytunnels, I'm just soaking some ranunculus and some anemones, because I have my ranunculus and anemone workshop online next week, and I'd like to have some sprouted plants, sprouted claws and corms to show people for that. I am not a kind of I don't get madly early sprouting my ranuncs and my anemones. I can't pronounce them. I know there are flower farmers who've been really getting ahead with this, and that's great. But my season really gets going in April, which is quite late. I'm not hoping for a crop of ranunculus in February or March. So I'm not rushing ahead, and this is actually still quite early for me. I really want lots and lots and lots of ranunculus in April and May. Those are my months. So this is just a little, this is just a little taster lot, having a soak, and I won't be planting my main crop of ranunculus. I won't be sprouting them or getting them going really into December. So really, I really wait for the winter before I get that going. But anyway, do join me on my demo next week. I know that ranunculus can be a little bit fiddly to grow. They're a little bit fussy, and sometimes people struggle. And I'm not brilliant at everything, but there are some things I'm quite good at. And growing ranunculus and anemones, despite thick, wet clay here in southeast Somerset in southwest England, is something I have worked out a really good system. So if you'd like to, join me next week on my ranunculus and anemone demo, and I will debunk some of the myths and make easy for you to grow some ranunculus, and hopefully these will have sprouted by then. Exciting! So I'll give these all a nice soak. Hello. And then I will put them to sprout tomorrow. This time of year, when you hear me walking along and there's the rattle of the trolley behind me, it's no longer filled with buckets of flowers. More likely, I'm playing the beginning of a long season of seedling Tetris. Oh yes. And you can see in my trolley, I've got my sweet peas going into the greenhouse. Actually, they're not, they're going into the polytunnel. But I've also got some wild tulip bulbs. These are the last of my bulbs, and they're going to be planted this afternoon too. So this is the small tunnel, and this is where all those sweet peas are going to be put. But before I put them, I need to make trenches for very rich compost, so that the sweet peas have got something very rich to grow in. So I'm going to put them in for the short term. So there, I've just put them on the side here. It's a cool polytunnel. There's no polythene around the sides. So it's just a little bit covered, and sweet peas love it in here. They do very well. So they'll get planted when I have taken out the mattock and made some nice long rows of really rich compost for them to grow into. And on the subject of digging, this is the big polytunnel here, and you can see I've got some lovely honesty there on the right. I've got wallflowers up there, I've got foxgloves, and actually there are some sweet No, these are Honesty. The wallflowers are up there. Then there's Sweet William and foxgloves there. But all those ranunculus and anemones are going to go down the middle here. So we're just digging it over a little bit. And then I'm going to put a load of compost. Yes, I know, I can see that the polythene is flapping. This is on the list to reskin. But for this winter, cash flow means that we will just tape it down, and it's going to have to give us another winter before we reskin it. This bed is full of perennials, like particularly my phlox here, and the blue is the bog sage, Salvia uglinosa. And we will leave this standing really until well into late winter, early spring, when we'll cut it all back and give this bed a bit of a composting, a bit of a feed and a bit of refresh. But leaving it all standing like this puts an enormous amount of forage for winter feeding birds. It's cover for overwintering insects. So we'll just leave it. Just leave it and deal with it in the spring. If you can be a bit untidy with your garden, not too organised, not cut everything down so it looks really immaculate, you will leave a lot of nice habitat for invertebrates as well as food for birds. So you can see, hang on, I'll show you. At the back of this bed, there's a lot of Verbena bonariensis, and the seed heads of those is very popular with goldfinches. It's a really great thing to leave standing over the winter as forage for your invertebrates. Isn't that blue of the bog sage amazing? Meanwhile, on my list of things to do, this is where I keep my narcissi crop under the weeds. Sometimes I grow something on top of the narcissi crop, but not this year. And so these weeds have just been sitting there growing along and having a nice time all summer. And I'm going to mow them down, and then I will put some compost on top, and then my narcissi will grow through. I need to get on with this because the narcs suddenly get going, and if I'm not careful, I miss my window. In the winter, we don't mow much. We keep the grass really quite long, as you can see, because then if I'm marching around on it, I flatten the grass as I go, and which protects the path, so I don't make such a quagmire. I don't make such a mess. So it's a way of saving a bit of money and saving the environment fun, because we're not mowing the grass too much, and making life easier as a flower farmer. And here's a lesson. I put these cyclamen in the ground, maybe 4 years ago, and nothing happened. I thought they just rotted away. They're in the lee of a hedge, in the shade. Anyway, suddenly, this year, bing, we have them. And they're popping up all over the place. You can see their leaves. I think the leaves are so beautiful. Never mind the flowers. And we've got them all along the edge of this little shady spot. So there's a lesson that patience is a virtue. Have it if you can. Seldom in a woman. And I won't finish it because somebody might be offended. Here's Tea Cake, just checking on us all. She just mooches around doing her thing. Don't you, Teeks? She's a bit deaf now. And the breathtaking amount of crab apples. It's been an incredible year for them. So I'm just enjoying them and selling them occasionally. But I'm really enjoying them. Look at that colour. And the ones I don't sell, imagine the forage for the birds in the winter. So this area is where I'm slowly clearing, mulching, remaking the sides of the beds. It's a slow, tidy, slow work, just a bit every day kind of a place. And you can see where I've got to with my bulbs. Always leave a marker so you can tell I mean, I can tell because it's very untidy, the surface of the bed there, but that's for the next lot. I'm putting species tulips in beds this winter as a bit of an experiment. They were so beautiful last spring that I think that in my spring DIY wedding buckets, they might be really lovely. I haven't ordered thousands of them. I've got 250, and I'm going to put them in quite close together, and we'll see how they do. If I don't harvest them, then I might. So I'm just thumbs upping to Fabrizio, who's busy marching around doing things. But if I don't harvest them for floristry, I can still pick the seed heads and take the seeds and scatter them around. So there won't be any waste. You can see where I've dug the dahlias up. I'm doing a sort of chunk at a time, but I haven't dug them all. This is Cafe au lait Royal, still flowering her head off. But slowly, I'm just picking them all up. Even though we haven't had a really major frost yet, we've now had quite a lot of rain. And if we then have a sharp frost on very wet dahlias in the ground, I risk losing them to rot. So I'm digging them up, chunk by chunk by chunk. You don't have to dig up your dahlias. You can just cut them down, and you can really mulch them well and leave them in the ground. I like to dig them up because I like to completely rearrange my cutting patches every season. So, work with yourself. You don't have to. Anybody who says you must do this or your project won't work isn't considering that your situation might be different from theirs. It's good for someone like me to say what I do, because then you can go, oh, that's interesting. You can consider how I do things, and then you might consider the way other people do things, and then you might come to your own conclusions, taking into account where you are in the world, what your earth is like, how the soil works, how cold your winter is, and all of that stuff. So if anybody says you must do this or it won't work, I don't think they're necessarily telling the truth. If somebody says this is how I do it, and do bear this in mind when you're making your own decisions, then they're helping you to think constructively around your own situation, and I think that's much more helpful. We have got a lot of hardy annual seedlings here. These are calendula and a few weeds. This can come out. It's good to know what's what. This is a brain ache. This is a kind of fireweed. My brain is not rose bay willow herb. It is not rose bay willow herb. It's a different kind of willow herb. Get rid of that. And there's a thistle. It's quite, at this time of year, it's quite zen weeding. I quite like just working my way along the beds. A little bit of that will go everywhere if I leave it for the spring. Cleavers. Always good to, if you see a weed as you're walking along, pull it out. It's one less thing to do later. I just chuck it on the path. There you go. And of course you can pull up the weed and leave it on the bed as a green manure to be dug in, or just rot down into the bed. But do be careful if you do that you turn the weed upside down so that the roots are facing the air and will be killed off by being not in contact to the earth. If you pull weeds and leave them with their roots touching the surface of the beds, nice warm autumn days like this, they might very well re-root and you'll be pulling them up again. So, Now, behind me is some of the willow that we are normally at this time of year turning into wreaths for people to use as bases for their Christmas wreaths. But I had a bit of an epiphany the other day. I was watching somebody called Cherry Tree Willow on the Flowers from the Farm Instagram feed, and she grows a lot of willow as well as various other things for her flower farm. And she said, I thought this was brilliant. She said, I don't harvest my willow until after Christmas because it's not losing, because of global warming, it's not losing its leaves early enough. So if I harvest all the willow now, it's not really dormant. It's not terribly good for it. So she harvests her willow in the deep midwinter when it is dormant and all the leaves have fallen off. And she makes her Christmas wreaths, her wreath bases with her willow in January and February. And then she can pre-sell them for the following winter. And I thought that was such a good idea. I'm going to do the same. So no, I'm not shredding my hands making wreath bases as I have done every year for 15 years in November and December. This year I'm going to do it after Christmas and have them ready, and then I'll know exactly how many I've got and I can sell exactly how many I've made. Seems very sensible to me. Obviously cash flow, kind of chopping and changing the cash flow, but you know, we love a challenge here at Common Farm and we wouldn't want to be bored, so let's make it life not difficult but more challenging for ourselves. Oh, it's windy. Off we go. I love this. We are the 5th of November. Remember the 5th of November. And this is a patch of sow and grow annual seeds, which came from Higgledy Garden, and I sowed them in a bit of ground I had spare. And look, they are still providing forage. And it's the 5th of November. They do look a bit Raggedy Ann, but I'm not going to do anything with them. I'm just going to leave them here and let them die down over the winter. And if they've seeded themselves, I'll have more for next year. If you're not a flower, if you're not a flower farmer, or if you are and you have a nice bit of ground, but you're not sure what to put into it in the spring, then a sow and grow patch like this is A, very attractive, but B, amazing forage for your local invertebrate and bird population. So look, here's ours just sitting here it's like a little treasure trove there for the birds and the bees. And then there are some parts of the farm that are just a pleasure as the leaves have turned and they shed onto the ground. What's really astonishing is I leave all these leaves, we don't rake them up, and by the end of next summer they will have completely disappeared. They will have rotted completely into the ground, which will look like bare earth. It's really astonishing how that happens. I love this. We call this the lugfall. Lugfall is an ancient word for the edge of the forest, and we are not far from the Selwood forest, and so this little band of trees that we planted around the edge of the property is our lugfall. Look at the colour of that hazel. Isn't that stunning? Now there's more good news here at Common Farm. You see this amazing wall of ivy? I've been really worried that we need to take it completely off the side of the house. And I really did not want to take it off the side of the house because it's hard to show you, but it's absolutely covered in bees, wasps, invertebrates, foraging the ivy. It's a really, really busy time of year, and this ivy will turn into buried ivy that can be used in Christmas decorations, but obviously we don't take all of it. So again, a bit like everything that happens here, some we grow for sale because that's how we earn a living, and some we leave for the invertebrates. Look, there's a wasp just working their way around, and they're always covered in wasps at this time of year. Anyway, so you can imagine what an environment this is. This is a massive amount of habitat that we've grown up the side of our house. But it is a bit out of control, and So we called up a tree surgeon for some advice. And Ben from the Bruton Tree Surgery Company came out this morning. And you know when you meet somebody and you think, what a brilliant person. This guy's job is to help people manage the kind of the big fauna, if you like, of their gardens. And this is one of my big fauna. Manage the big trees, manage the big growing environments, the stuff when it gets out of control and you don't know what to do about it. So this has got out of control, but we really love it, and I didn't want to lose it. And the fantastic thing is, I talked to this chap and he said, is this wall lime mortared? Yes, we moved here 20 years ago and we had it repointed with lime mortar. It was very damp. And then this ivy was a gift, and it came in a pot from a friend of my mother's. It was a housewarming gift, and it was just a little ivy in a little pot. And we planted it at the bottom here, and it kind of just loved it, so it went berserk. But it's full of birds' nests and feeding all kinds of invertebrates spend the winter in there. And right now, all kinds of invertebrates are feeding from it. So I really didn't want to lose it. And he said, no, you don't need to lose it. I'd imagine that there'd be poison and they'd have to cut it off at the roots and we'd have to sit there and watch it die for a year. And then he'd pull it off the wall and we'd have to repoint the wall and the whole thing. I was so stressed about it. And he said, no. Is your house damp? No, it's not damp. Then the ivy is not growing through the wall. It's fine. And in fact, it's probably is helping keep the wet. It's facing the west where the weather comes from here. It's probably helped keeping the wet away from the west side of the house. Oh, okay. And he said he could control it, manage it, but we can keep the wall of ivy. And I can not tell you how happy I am. And so that is really, for me, that's like worthy of a whole big gratitude walk. And it's my really, really good news for the day. But it's also really good news for all the people who live in this great big wall of ivy. I think without it, my house would look so harsh and mean. With it looks soft and gentle and welcoming to more than just people, but to the different kind of people who like to live in ivy. Happy days. Now, the pond dried out in our very dry summer, so we dug it out and gave it a tidy up. And so I thought, well, it's refilling nicely. I'll just bring the ducks to have a bit of a swim. Go on, ducks. Sometimes they like to swim, and sometimes they're really fussy and they go, I don't know if I want to go in. But they're looking okay today. In a go. They're just as funny as ever. And this time of year, if you have any mown sort of wild areas, this is a great time to walk around and see if you can recognise any of the plants that you've got just in leaf. So this, for example, this is an oxeye daisy. There's a lot of buttercup here. This is buttercup there. But we don't mind the buttercup. It's lovely forage in the spring. Obviously, the odd thistle isn't going to ruin everything, but we have a few. But what else have we got here that's worth keeping an eye out for? I think this is a scabious. There's quite a lot of scabious. there. And see if I can recognise anything else as I walk around. Dock. I don't mind a bit of dock. I don't want to be overwhelmed by it, but I don't mind a bit of dock. Oh look, and this is achillea. Lots of this feathery leaf is achillea, and I think this is a plantain. And then there's a dandelion. Some of it's all quite ordinary. So there's a dandelion there. It's interesting. It's good to know what you've got. It's good to know how to recognise things. And here, Fabrizio's hung up some old wild orchid seed heads, and they're just being blown around to settle in the grass sward here. Obviously the wild orchid seed heads come from our own wild orchids in the fields here. We don't go around stealing them from other people or from the roadside, because that would be against the law. And we don't mow all of our wild areas. This is a lot of scabious seed heads here, and again you can see how they've been eaten away. They've been eaten off and blown away. So they're really good forage, and leaving a bit of bramble like this again is somewhere for your hedgehogs to make a little home for the winter, all kinds of people to spend the winter. So don't be too tidy in your garden if you've got room to have a bit of mess. So I'm back at the studio, and look who's having a little snooze on her cushion. Let's not wake her up. She's an old lady now, and we don't want to disturb her. And the last thing to show you is under the table. This is where I'm drying out my dahlias. So I'm digging them up, labelling them. As you can see, I don't know what all of them are, question mark. I'm notorious for being very bad at labelling. And then I'm just laying them on the floor, and it's cool, frost-free in here, and they're just drying off. And when they've had a couple of weeks drying off in here, I will just put them in bail trays, and they'll go upstairs until I get them out to sprout from them or split them in the spring. Look, there they are underneath the sprouting ranunculus. The end of one season and the beginning of the next. The end of one season, that's bracken ballerina, and the beginning of the next.